Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss with fellow Botswana at home and anybody who is interested in the culture, the history, and the heritage of the Bakalanga. Just to begin with, the Bakalanga were organized into three different phases of organization. They started from present day, Cameroon, went eastwards during the Bantu migrations, and then went southwards into Southern Africa, where they began to organize themselves, initially into, chiefdoms, and then at a later stage, they started to organize themselves into a kingdom, the kingdom of Mapungubwe. The Bakalanga, they built the kingdom of Mapungubwe, which is a World Heritage Site that is based at the confluence of the Shashe and the Limpopo rivers in South Africa. Then after that, the collapse of Mapungubwe, which occurred in about AD 1150. Then the Bakalanga were also responsible for building the state of Great Zimbabwe from AD 1250 up to 1450. And just before the collapse of Great Zimbabwe, other Bakalanga who were living in Southern Africa at that particular time, they had started building another, civilization. That one of the Bakalanga state of Butua.
The Bakalanga state of?
The Bakalanga state of Butua or Butua.
Okay.
It was the apex of Southern Africa's, a civilization.
Okay.
At that time, the Bakalanga remember of the olden days that, the Bakalanga was so rich and powerful. Everything was so peaceful. The Bakalanga were rich. The cows were fed at that particular time, so that fat and big, that people could afford to milk them while they were standing. And women were living, in lavish.
Okay.
And they could even afford to bath with milk. And that's why even, the princesses or our women from Bakalanga, the expensive, you have to pay, a lot of cattle to marry there. So
Okay,
it begins there.
And before you proceed, because I want to follow this properly,
Yes.
at that particular time, where did we find them?
They were located in the same region where you would find in this country where the Bakalanga are located
Okay.
today. In the Mapungubwe, it is along the Shashe, the Shashe and the Limpopo area, following the course of the Mototse, going westwards into the Makadikadi, and then going northwards to cross the present-day border between Zimbabwe and Botswana into the Matopos, and that's where they were based, and going, into some parts of the Limpopo region in South Africa. That's where they were based from AD 1100. That's 1,000, over 1,200 years ago. The Bakalanga were still living in the same place, and their territory is marked, permanently printed in the same area that I'm talking about through the presence or by the presence of stone-walled, sites of villages that are located in hilltops.
Okay.
Places like Domboshaba, you will find those are the places where the Bakalanga were staying. They are located all over in this particular region. And then, at that particular time when I'm talking about those states, particularly the Bakalanga state of Buddha, which is very important in the context of Botswana, in the sense that after, its disintegration, then the people who were part of that particular state ended up in the then Bechuanaland Protectorate.
Okay.
And this is how it happened.
Okay.
Initially,
we don't have a lot of time.
Yes.
So if, as you're giving us this context, let's try to remember that we want to understand why in present day they're calling to have their own Khosi within Tutume.
yes.
Yes.
I'm getting to that particular point, where I'm saying, at that time of the Bakalanga state of Butua, which has got connection with the Tutume district people today. It is, the fact that they were ruled by two dynasties of Mambos in the state. They had a Mambo who was a sort of a king of kings, the one who was above the Khosi code, if you were to put it in the context of the present-day Botswana today. He was the ultimate. And from AD 1400 to AD 1683, we have the early, dynasty. It is called the Chibundule dynasty. They are the ones who built that particular state. And then we have a number of Chibundules. It's a dynasty, and they are named by the same, name. Like we can have Kama the First and Kama the Third in the context of, the Vanuatu, because we are living with them and they are also involved in this particular, issue. And then after that particular dynasty, it collapsed and it was replaced by another dynasty called the Nechasike. The Nechasike was a military, state. The earlier ones, they were ruling through trade.
Yes. Mr. Mabuza, I'm going to have to interject you again. We don't have a lot of time to cover this. Perhaps, you talked about the three phases, and I get that you are trying to paint that picture for us of the three phases. But in order for us to be able to talk about the recent call, perhaps let's fast forward. Let's summarize that. Fast forward to pre-independence, post-independence Botswana, what we find and how we find ourselves here. Because if we take a lot of time there, we are not going to address the issue here.
Yeah, no. Thank you for that. What actually is that happened is that after that particular state, it collapsed with the coming of the Mfetane, and then the people scattered. Some of them they went as far as Shosho, where the Vanuatu stayed, and they asked for protection there. And some surrendered to the Ndebele. The people of Makapatona or Madandume in Bakalanga, those of Mengwe, some of Mswazi, they remained there and surrendered to the Ndebele. And then there were many who went to live with the Vanuatu to ask for protection, and the land was therefore of the Bakalanga taken under the protection of the Vanuatu, and it became part of Vanuatu territory. As a part of protection. After independence, we continue to have a scenario whereby the land of the Bakalanga, which is in the area around Tutume, is still under the Vanuatu rule. So today, if they are calling for independence from Vanuatu, they are saying, no, look, we know where we are coming from, we know who we are, we know our coexistence with you and how you have been governing us. But this is our land and we recognize it this way.
Okay.
We have always had our mambo and like this, and we can still have our mambo today.
Okay. So could we say essentially what they are asking for is the emancipation of Kalangas in the Tutume district?
It's the same scenario that we had with the Buchanan Protectorate when we got our independence. At one point we had this country under the British government. And then later on, we went and sought for our independence. And in 1966, we got our independence because the British recognized that the land belonged to the Botswana. They had actually provided protection at a time that was convenient. And the Bakalanga of Tutume, what they are saying is that the time is now convenient for them to be separated from the Vanuatu so that they can be in a position as a tribe of the Bakalanga, be able to articulate their own things, cultural tradition, their heritage and practices, and do them the Kalanga way, without necessarily having to consult the Vanuatu over things that are of Kalanga origin.
Okay. Yes. Earlier on, when we were speaking of air, you talked about secession.
Yes.
Which I think it's quite perhaps a very difficult or somewhat challenging concept, particularly when you look at what has happened. If we take the likes of Sudan, where you had Sudan, and suddenly South Sudan ceded from from Sudan to become South Sudan. Yes. So when we talk about this separation, this emancipation or secession, as you used it, how according to your understanding, do they envision this to happen? Is it a matter of just marking territories here that there's a piece of land, go and do what you need to do, or what other aspects do we anticipate they're referring to?
My own understanding of the situation, we call it bulilima. and we call the people in the Tutume district traditionally the Balilima. The district was called Balilima district in the past, during the Bakalanga state of Budua. What the Balilima are saying is this: they want to have their own paramount chief or leader in the Kalanga traditional sense, and not to be under the Bangwatu Khosikolo. That is one. The second thing, they are saying they recognize the fact that the land in Tutume is theirs traditionally. The Bakalanga, they know that they were there in that region before the Bangwatu came in this region. The Bangwatu reached Shoshong. They arrived in Shoshong in 1770. The Bakalanga were still living in that region for over 1,500 years before the arrival of the Bangwatu.
Okay.
In that particular region. That's what they recognize. And when they talk about the issue of saying that we want to be separated from them, they are saying we want to mark to have the traditional boundary marked such that then the district that is marked and say this is the territory that belongs to us as Bakalanga. It is known traditionally where it started and where it ended. The presence of the stone walls that I was talking about, they are all there to guide also those boundaries and say this was the land of the Bakalanga. Their chief was living on this particular hill, this way, that way, that way.
Okay.
It goes all the way. So
Now,
that's what they are saying, that's what they want to recognize, and it's there. That's all maybe that they need, and they're saying we'll do go and have a way of addressing our own issues within the land that is traditionally ours as Bakalanga.
Okay. Now, given the context you painted, the three faces, the Mfakanis, and some of them, you did say they are the Balilima,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, and they had to seek for protection from the Bangwatu.
Yes.
From a leadership structure, bohosi structure.
Yes.
When we look at other tribes, for example, from a structure perspective, do we have that in existence, or it's up to them to figure out how they sort it out should this be acceded to?
They have the structure. It's known, traditional structure. Who is senior? Who follows him? Mengwe is senior. Hosi Mengwe of Maitengo is senior among all the Balilima. The Balilima are made up of the Baumbe. And we have the Balilima people. We have the Banyai of Mengwe. They are the ones who are senior. And then we have other Bakalanga people, the other Sututswana people who are culturalized, like the Bapedi of Mswazi, of Chilagwani, the Paka of Sibina. That whole group is called the Balilima. They live in a territory called the Bulilima, traditionally, Bulilima Gwamengwe. So it is the Balilima in that particular context. Then we have Mengwe traditionally as the one who is senior to them all. In fact, in 2018, he was the one who was officiating at Domboshava Cultural Festival to recognize the fact that he's actually senior to all the Bakalanga, including those that are in the Northeast district. And then we have, the structure in which, in the past, the Bakalanga were organized. Under him, who comes after that, we have what we call the district chiefs or the Misinda or the She Zemitutu in Kalanga, the chiefs of the district. Maybe the district of Sibina, as an example, where I come from. She Hakanyan or She Sibina will be the chief. Is the She Ntutu of that particular area, and he will have what we call Makulukuta, who are the junior chiefs or the village chiefs. Yes, the village chiefs who are under him. Okay. And we have that structure throughout Bakalanga, and we have them having a Mengwe who is senior to them. Okay. And Mengwe was not Mambu. He had somebody that he was reporting to who is Mambu. He was there, he was called Mbili Mangenje in Kalanga, and Mbili Mangenje being the governor of that particular whole area. Okay. That is the traditional structure. It is there. Okay. We know it.
So given what you are saying, the structure is there, the Kalangas know the structure, they understand it, so that is no issue. But perhaps then let's talk about what the implications then would be if this is acceded to from just a cultural perspective,
Yes.
Amongst the community, also considering that we have the Kalangas in the Ngwatu territory.
Yes.
What happens there is, do we need to be having a conversation with Bangwatu, or what should happen, and how do we see this unfolding?
A conversation is necessary. It's definitely needed. We need to start a conversation and say, look, maybe the timing, the time is right. This is, we talk about the second, republic. We want to look at where we come from. The era of nation building, where we used to fear that, all these things may lead to, tribal wars or something like that. It hasn't happened. In the last over 50 years. It hasn't happened. We have coexisted. And we in the Second Republic, we should then take the initiative and say, look, let us now revisit some of these things that, the sacrifices that were made over certain people at the expense of nation building, and say, no, let us look at some of these natural injustices that were done so that we can build this nation of Botswana, and see how we can then go over there and try to make sure that our people, like the Basarwa as an example, they get the recognition that they deserve, that we all the Bantu speaking people who found them here, and we accord the same to people like Bakalanga, people like Babirwa, people like Batswapong, and say, no, it was the case at the particular time. Now let's allow them to do things their own way, have their own leaders. They know their structure. They probably have their structures. We do, as the Bakalanga. We have our own structure. And let them have that cultural pride. The whole things that we talk about, social harmony, kahisano, pride, butu, everything. Let it trickle down to every Motswana and have that. The right to a kosi.
Yes, let's